Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, Medicare, and when to get on it and how it works and what you should do with it is one of the most complicated topics in retirement planning for federal employees. It can get very messy very quickly. So today I'm going to summarize it for you. If you and your spouse are thinking about, okay, when should we get on Medicare? Does it make sense? This video is for you. It's going to simplify everything. Say, okay, for federal employees specifically, what should you be thinking about and when should you be on Medicare? Now, if you're new to the channel, so good to have you. My name is Dallin Hawes, a financial planner who serves federal employees just like you every day, and I love it. So let's talk about it. Long story short, most people get on Medicare at 65. That's when you're able to enroll in Medicare. So if you turn 65, then you get on it then. Now, generally, spouses turn 65 at different times, and so it's very possible that you're on Medicare or your spouse is on Medicare before the other one, and that's very normal. So when one of you turns 65 and the other isn't yet, then what would happen is one of you would have Medicare coverage and your government insurance, and then when the other person turns 65, they will join you. But in the meantime, they will only have the government insurance. Medicare is not a family plan. It's not a self plus one plan. It's per individual. Now, one thing to keep in mind is one of the biggest reasons people enroll right away at 65 on Medicare is because if you don't, there's a penalty. Now, let me actually back up. If you choose not to enroll in Medicare, which we'll talk about the pros and cons of doing it and not just in just a second, but let's say you don't get on Medicare. If you never get on Medicare, there's no penalty. There's no downside. Okay. However, if you don't get on Medicare and then you want to get in later, there is a 10% penalty per year that you didn't enroll. So let me give an example. Let's say you retire at 65 and you say, look, I'm good. I've got my FEHB, my government insurance. I don't want Medicare. No problem. Let's say 5 years pass and now you're 70. And something changes. You're like, actually, given my current medical situation, I want Medicare. Well, you waited 5 years, and so there's a 10% penalty for every year. So that means your premiums would be 50% higher for the rest of your life, 70 plus, because you waited. Now, there is one exception to that 10% penalty. If you are still working for the government, or your spouse is still working for the government and you're covered under their FEHB. If you're covered under FEHB by actively working and you work past 65, then this penalty is waived until you retire. So for example, if you keep working until 67 for the government and you have FEHB, then there's no 10% penalty that accrues, even if you don't get on at 65 because you're still working, right? And then when you retire, if you then don't enroll, that's when the penalty would start. But if you enroll right at retirement at 67, you're good to go. You are good to go. Now, with that being said, hopefully that gives you an idea of when people normally enroll. Again, normally it's 65 or later if they're still working for the government in the meantime. And if you don't enroll right away, there is a penalty. But let's answer the question of, okay, should you enroll? Should you enroll? Does it make sense to get on at all? And the first question to answer is, well, some people are actually required to. Not most feds aren't, but some are. For example, if you are on TRICARE, you are required to be on Medicare. Even if you work past 65, they're going to require you to be on Medicare if you want to keep your TRICARE. At 65, you're going to be on Medicare A and B. Medicare A and B. TRICARE requires that. You'll know if you're on TRICARE, don't worry. And if you work for USPS, they are requiring many of their retirees to be on Medicare. So you can check with them just to make sure it does or doesn't apply to you. But USPS and TRICARE requires Medicare. If you don't fall into either of those buckets, though, Medicare is not required. It is optional. And here are the factors to consider. Basically, Medicare has two different parts that impact most feds. Okay, Medicare has other parts like C and D that simply doesn't impact. Again, C and D that simply just doesn't impact most federal employees. It just doesn't. Most feds just don't need it because you have your government insurance. So A and B are the ones that federal employees should worry about. Medicare A is free. It doesn't cost anything, and there's no penalties for waiting. The only thing that costs money and there are penalties for is Part B. So Part A generally is a no-brainer. It's like, why not? So most people generally get benefit for being on it, so why not? Even if you're not wanting Part B, Part A is fine, right? Just to have that. That's totally good. Now, Part B, again, is not required unless you're on TRICARE or USPS. However, most feds actually do get benefit for being on Part B. Most do. And let me explain why. Yes, Part B does cost money, and you can find the most recent premiums online. If you just Google Medicare Part B premiums, right now, as of recording, the monthly premiums are about $180 or so per month per person. So it's not the cheapest thing in the world. It does cost money. So you might ask, well, look, I'm paying for Blue Cross Blue Shield. I'm paying for Aetna or Kaiser or GEHA. I'm paying for my government plan already. Why on earth would I want to pay more for health insurance when this plan's working fine for me? And the answer is, first, you don't have to, right? But second, if you're on Medicare A and B and you've got your other insurance, it's normally fantastic coverage. Phenomenal coverage, where Medicare becomes primary. They pick up most expenses, and then your FEHB, your government plan, picks up basically everything else in the vast majority of the cases. And it's very common that your FEHB, your government plan, will waive out-of-pocket costs like copays, co-insurance, deductibles, etc. And so you can have fantastic coverage throughout retirement, which is normally when people really like to have fantastic coverage. That's when people tend to use their insurance the most. And many FEHB plans will actually help reimburse some of the cost of Medicare Part B, like Blue Cross Blue Shield Basic does, Aetna Direct does, or certain plans that do. Not all plans do, but some do. So check with your plan provider. Say, hey, do you help pay for the cost of Medicare Part B? So long story short, given all the reimbursements, FEHB paying and waiving deductibles and stuff, many people find it beneficial to be on Medicare A and B. Again, not required, but many people do. The one scenario we find where it consistently often doesn't make sense is if you're a really high earner. If you make, let's call it $300,000-$400,000 plus per year in retirement, then Medicare Part B actually gets very expensive. It goes up in price based on your income, and so it may not make sense for you. But other than that, if you, let's say, are a married couple and you make $200,000 or less per year in retirement, most of the time it makes sense. Most of the time it makes sense. Again, make sure it makes sense for you. These are just generalities that we've seen working with a lot of retiring federal employees, okay? So I hope that's helpful. Hopefully it gives you a sense of, first, when you should enroll and if it makes sense to be on Medicare A and B for you. Hope that helps. Hopefully that is helpful in your situation, and if you have your own experience, put in the comments below, share, and we'll learn and get better together. And I'll see you in the next video.